A poor organizational culture may hurt the success of any business. Hi, my name is Jimmy Walaviachi, and you're welcome to Corporate Governance Africa, where we seek to promote good governance through film. The purpose of this video is to show 4 important aspects which a business owner, a board, or management needs to consider in order to cultivate a favorable ethical culture for business success. You see, corporate governance is about a good corporate culture because corporate culture is important for a business to achieve success. We explore the example of Big Motor, a business in Japan dealing in the sale, inspection, and repair of motor vehicles. An independent investigation found that when customers brought their cars for repairs, the business's employees overcharged the customers by deliberately damaging their customers' cars, rendering unnecessary repairs, and doctoring photos. And following these actions, the business submitted fraudulent insurance claims to their customers' insurance companies. Big Motor was founded in May 1978 by Hiroyuki Kaneshige in his hometown of Minami Iwakuni-cho, Iwakuni City. Big Motor engages in the business of used and new car sales, the purchase of domestic and foreign cars, vehicle inspection, general maintenance, and sheet metal painting. As of October 2023, it had over 5,000 employees in all its different branches across Japan. According to a report by Teikoku Data Bank, a market research firm, the value of sales in Japan's used car market reached a record high of 3.9 trillion yen in fiscal year 2022, which ended in March of 2023. Big Motor boasted the top market share at about 15%. It was therefore one of the biggest successes in the industry. However, a poor organizational culture or an unethical organizational culture brought a stop to that success. On the 6th of June 2022, 3 insurance companies were informed by an Insurance Crime Prevention Council in Japan that Big Motor had filed inappropriate insurance claims against these insurance companies. Initially, Big Motor responded to the insurance companies by informing them that these claims were made because of the inexperience of its employees and because of poor technology. The business conducted an investigation, but 2 of the insurance companies were not satisfied with the truthfulness of the outcome of these internal investigations of Big Motor. In response to this skepticism, and in order to cultivate trust with its stakeholders, Big Motor on the 30th of March 2023 appointed a special investigation committee which was comprised of an independent panel of lawyers. The panel found that the employees of Big Motor had indeed filed fraudulent insurance claims with the insurance companies. The fraudulent claims fell into 3 main categories. The first is that they would deliberately damage motor vehicles that the customers had brought for repair to Big Motor. The second category was in doctoring photographs to make the vehicles look more damaged than they actually were. For example, they would take the photos at different angles to exaggerate the actual damage that the vehicles had suffered. The third way was to make claims for unnecessary work, and this would include carrying out unnecessary sheet metal works, tower towing, and painting work. The consequences of these findings was that the business began to suffer serious financial losses because of a very seriously damaged reputation, and the business was subjected to serious government sanctions, and the founders of Big Motor were forced out of management. Indeed, the investigation showed that the business was plagued with an unethical organizational culture. An organization's culture are the shared assumptions, beliefs, and normal behaviors of its people, including its board, management, and employees. The organization's culture determines the way people live and act in an organization, a team, or department. And the culture can determine whether the business succeeds or fails. As has already been mentioned, the organizational culture of Big Motor was caused, or it was characterized by at least 4 main factors from which we can learn to cultivate better cultures in our businesses. The first was unrealistic performance targets. A business needs to set realistic performance targets to cultivate a good corporate culture. In the Big Motor scandal, different outlets were required to make an average of 40,000 yen for each vehicle that was delivered by its customers to its outlets for repair. According to the investigation, the employees who carried out the unauthorized work did so because they had been instructed to do so by their supervisors. To address this important issue, the independent panel advised that the company change their performance measures. They proposed that the business consider setting sales targets that focus on the efficiency and accuracy of work content and setting a salary structure based on the degree to which such sales targets are actually achieved. See, negative performance targets put undue pressure on employees to meet those targets, and they will use all means necessary, including negative unethical practices to achieve those targets, and hence they cultivate a negative corporate culture. The next is unfair human resource people management practices. An important reason or an important factor for the unethical corporate culture in Big Motor was that there was an atmosphere in which it was very difficult to disobey unjust instructions from superiors. The consequences of disobedience would be demotions without the right to being heard. This was definitely unfair to the employees or to the workers. For example, the investigation report notes that a plant manager who did not meet the profit quota for 2 or 3 consecutive months would be replaced or demoted to a rank and file employee. Because of this state of affairs, the dishonest behavior became a daily occurrence in order to increase sales. A former full-time employee said that his workplace became dominated by sales quotas and iron-fisted personnel appointments. To address these unfair practices, the investigation panel recommended that the company put in place effective whistleblower systems and ensures that it complies with the employment laws of Japan. Following the employment laws and having effective whistleblower procedures or policies would ensure that the employees are not punished for speaking out against unethical practices, as was the case in Big Motor. Another important factor or contributor to unethical business practices was the failure of the board to set the tone or to exercise their supervisory role over the management of the organization. The board plays a major role in cultivating an ethical culture in an organization. For Big Motor, the board did not give effective oversight of the organization. The panel found that there were no board minutes, and this means that the board did not meet to deliberate on the affairs of the business. They did not evaluate whether the business was being run on ethical principles and practices. Boards play an important role in setting the tone or the ethical culture in an organization. They are at the top, and what they do at the top trickles down to the organization. But if the board is not involved in the company, not holding meetings, then that means that the management or the employees may proceed to cultivate unethical cultures which are detrimental to the progress and success of the company. And they do so unhindered by the board. Edgar Schein states that organizational cultures are created by leaders, and one of the most decisive functions of the leadership may well be the creation, the management, and if necessary, and this is important, the destruction of culture. Negative cultures can be destroyed, can be removed or transformed by a board of directors, but they need to exercise their authority, they need to exercise their oversight role in order for this to happen. Considering the important role of the directors in this respect, the investigation committee recommended that there should be an active board in Big Motor, and this active board should include non-executive directors so that the governance is not vested only in the founder. They also recommended that the board holds meetings and that they take appropriate minutes, showing that these meetings had been held and showing how different decisions had actually been arrived at. The fourth important factor or reason why there was an unethical corporate culture in Big Motor was to do with the internal controls of the organization. Here, the investigators found that there were poor internal controls in the organization, and they attributed this to the absence of board oversight. If the board had given effective oversight, the board would have ensured that Big Motor had effective internal controls so that the day-to-day operations of the organizations are streamlined, but they are conducted in an ethical manner that can help Big Motor to succeed in the long term, not just in the short term. The independent panel therefore recommended that the company put in place internal controls so that the board can cultivate a culture of compliance, so that these unethical practices that were carried out with customers' vehicles would no longer happen, but that the customers' affairs and repairs would be handled in a competent and ethical manner. In conclusion, the owner of a business, the board of an organization, or the management of an organization should exercise reasonable duty of care and diligence by giving effective oversight of the business. By this, they may include, if it's a board, they need to attend board meetings, they need to know their companies, they need to understand the business of the organization, and they need to ensure that appropriate performance targets and measures and disciplinary proceedings and fair practices are actually put in place in the organization. It's important to have appropriate human resource policies in place, and when these policies are put in place, they should be implemented so that employees enjoy just and fair performance measures and fair disciplinary mechanisms in place. Finally, it can be seen that a poor organizational culture may be very costly to a business, so it makes more business sense to conduct business ethically. Because if the right thing is not done, the long-term survival of a business may not be guaranteed. Good organizational culture determines the long-term success of a business.